Hello, this is Charlie Lorenz, and it is April 5th, 2020, and this is the submission for my assignment within the Introduction to Adult and Continuing Education course, specifically around the military contributions to the field of adult education. So the agenda of this presentation is I will cover a brief introduction, go over three different major contributions by the military to adult education, and then go over a summary of the benefits. So first, as an introduction, the U.S. military has made many different and significant contributions to adult education, essentially being the leading edge of some fundamental changes within education, which some of the practices are used today. The presentation I'm going to go over today is going to specifically be include three major contributions that's specifically around innovation and along with access. This is around some of them that many people will recognize, but may be unaware that the military was the point of origin. Some of the other areas, but just as important, were part of the military as their contribution was they've expanded or utilized recognition of learning outside of the classroom, brought about instructor system development, distant learning, and different types of off-campus programs. All of these have been contributions by the U.S. military, but will not be covered in this presentation. So the first contribution I want to talk about is the GI Bill, which is the official name for the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, which was signed by Franklin Roosevelt as a reward for veterans and members who have honorable service within during World War II. And it established, essentially the whole bill established hospitals, made low-interest mortgage available, and specifically to this presentation is they provided stipends for tuition and cost of living. The GI Bill in 1947 was so successful that approximately 50% of college admissions were under the GI Bill, and 7.5 million veterans from World War II went to college, vocational school, or different programs through this bill. Ultimately, what this has contributed is it provided access to colleges and different job programs that may not have been available to most citizens of this country prior to the introduction of the GI Bill. The second contribution is standardized testing. Now, in 1918, the U.S. Army actually introduced they called at the time the first paper and pencil test, which was essentially unpolitically correct called an intelligence test, or really a comprehension program to see how well recruits that were looking to join the military, how much they could comprehend from a written exam. And what the immediate results were that they had a very big literacy issue, since over 30% of the 1.5 million soldiers who took the test couldn't even read it. Some of the test questions were all yes or no. Some of them were as simple as, does a dog bark? Yes or no. Is John a male name? Yes or no. These are the very simplistic questions that they went over. But essentially it was the first use of a standardized type test to essentially understand the comprehension of the soldiers. It is now the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, which is the common test used by all military services as your basic screening of academic skills before entering the military. And now, as we're all familiar with, there are many different types of standardized tests. Almost all education will use some type of standardized test, but based for screening purposes, which is essentially the first usage of standardized tests for the U.S. Army. And third and finally, the major contribution I want to cover is the GE test, which was originated out of the military. The U.S. Army essentially recruited a Dr. Francis Spalding out of Harvard University, who he believed that college credit could be granted based on the idea that they could test and give credit for a high school diploma based on the questions that are part of the test. The U.S. Armed Forces essentially developed the test to measure major concepts of what was covered in a 4-year education. It was first used on World War II veterans to help them readjust to civilian life and be able to pursue higher education once they completed their military obligation. And then in 1947, the tests were actually used for the first time for non-veteran adults. GED testing is actually recognized by many different employers and institutions of higher learning, and has actually increased the opportunity for educational opportunity for millions of Americans, even as you can see by my latest bottom bullet is that approximately 15% of all high school diplomas are issued through a GED test. So in summary, as you can see, the U.S. military has a very large and very influential bearing over adult education here in the U.S. They've had a highly productive relationship between adult education and the U.S. military. Millions of people have benefited, as we've seen by the different major contributions I mentioned. As I said, I didn't mention all of them, but millions and millions of people have been able to be benefited from this. It's also been providing access to individuals that may not have been available before, which essentially allows everybody to increase their opportunity for the participation in different types of adult and continuing education opportunities. So thank you very much, and